want to move now to our debate style format. Now I want to make sure, is Phil Young in the room? You're here. You're here hiding in the rafters. Look at that. Just in time delivery. Perfect. So we've got a debate style format. The house view is that we believe vertically integrated business models are for the benefit of the firm rather than the client. David A. Norman, or Dan, the CEO of TCF Investments, is going to present the house view, and Phil is going to present the opposing view. They will each be given a strict 7 minutes to present their case. They will have 2 minutes each for a rebuttal, and then we will put it to the audience, and I'm going to try and see past the lights to the gallery as well, but we will put it to a vote, so you will decide who wins the dinosaur tale. Who's the dinosaur in the room? So with that, I will pass to, can you get through there? Well done. Gosh, all right.
Vaulted onto the stage.
All right, 7 minutes.
I quite fancy that. No, sorry, good. So this house believes that vertically integrated advice models are for the benefit of the firm rather than the customer. So I'm going to take the customer perspective. Of course they bloody well are. Vertical integration today, so what's going on today in scale, not little firms that are vertically integrating, so they're big stuff, is firms are acquiring firms to make their life easy, because it's hard work doing all this stuff. And that's partly driven by the advisor demographic, pale, stale males. It's driven, therefore, to make the firm's life easy, not for the customer's benefit. And the real skill is you can extract more margin by vertically integrating and keep it. Why would you not? That's what businesses do. And of course, you can grow your multiple if you get more and more advisors. Anybody see a customer benefit in any of that? No. Because there are none. It's great for the firm, it's great for the shareholders of the acquiring the vertically integrating firm, and it's a crap deal for the customer. So let's have a look at it. What's going on? There were 250,000 advisors and now there are 25,000. Why? Because it's hard. Prod, MiFID, RDR, compliance, API, PSD2. How many TLAs do you need? It's driving us all bonkers. And what do we really want to do? We want to go and see customers and chat to them. So if you can give me a firm and environment where I can go and do that stuff and take all the poo away from me, I'll take it on. And that's what vertically integrated models do. They would do a brilliant job for advisors. Yes? Who wouldn't want an easier life? Of course, the stretch and the conflict of managing all those things becomes quite a challenge, and that's the big challenge for some of the SJP kind of copycats. It's really hard to do that stuff really well with scale. Just look at platforms trying to do a bit of software after 10 years. Really? So is it value for money? Okay, value for money. Let's take a benchmark. On these measures, are vertically rented firms better? Is their performance better than average? Can't be. Are their costs lower? No. Are there economies of scale? Big no. And that's the real challenge. The fiduciary duty is failing, because with all this scale, it should be getting cheaper. Otherwise, what's the point? Is service better? Maybe. Is the advice better? Do vertically oriented firms offer better advice than other firms? No, because there's a standard of advice. Are the outcomes better? Is peace of mind better? Actually, peace of mind might be better. If there's something big standing behind my individual advisor, do I trust it more? But is that worth paying for? Let's look at the really big conflict. It's my capital, I put it at risk, and you take the benefit. That's what's going on. In a advice business, it's bespoke, it's one-to-one. A vertically integrated business goes, here's the clever trick. If I get your product and your assets and my platform, yes, I can get real scale and I can extract that from you. And you don't share in that. Why? Because the price doesn't go down. I've looked at all the vertically integrated firms I could find and their price over the last 10 years, and guess what? It ain't going down. The last guy, it doesn't go down. There are no economies of scale for the customer. It's bonkers. What am I paying for? I'll tell you what I'm paying for. In the long run, equities do about 5% per annum over inflation. Gilts do about 2%. So in a 60-40 portfolio, I get about 3.8% per annum in the long run. How much? Let's try this. How many people would pay more than half of the 3.8% to their advisor to get the 3.8% that you get from the market? Right? And no vertically integrated firm charges less than that. They all charge more. That's not good. Who'd pay 25% of that? Still nobody. That's 0.9, by the way. Good luck with that one. Faraday discovered that electromagnetic fields will bend polarized light. There you go. That's the bit I know. So you get a light side and a dark side. You can see where this is going. The dark side has approaching 100 billion of assets under management and charges 2.4%. Just imagine what they could do if they use their scale to drive the cost down. But they don't need to, because there's no price comparison. Somebody's coming a bit later in the audience who works for a firm that begins with V and has guard in the title. In the US, you can now buy advice, platform, and fund management for 0.9, all in. Yep. And guess which way it's going with scale? Yep, you got it. It's going the right way. So, it's a good business model for the firm and the shareholders. Value for money for the customers, it's not good. Economies of scale go to the shareholder. The price is poor. The management capability is conflicted. Good retirement for me. Poor old you. Sorry.
Thank you. Vanguard, a vertically integrated business. Thanks for that freebie. I've got 3 points. The first one is that it doesn't really exist as a term. The second one is that there's a false opposition here, which makes it sound a lot cleverer than it actually is, like a proper debating type thing. And then the third one is that I believe that it can have a far greater impact on price in the long term. And by the time I get there, you'll think, oh, we should just gone straight to the third point straight away, so I'll get on with it. My first point is that vertical integration doesn't really exist, I don't think, as a term. Essentially, over the last 5 years, probably more than 5 years, I've talked to countless numbers of IFA businesses who've run model portfolios and wanted to pick up discretionary permissions to be able to run those models more effectively. In many cases, they've charged absolutely nothing once they've got those discretionary permissions to run them. In a lot of other cases, they've added something that's below the market rate. In pretty much every circumstance that I can think about, the total cost to the consumer has been the same or less than it was if they had outsourced that business in the first place to another DFM, etc., on the way for it. There are lots of other people working, advisors that I've spoken to as well, working in networks and in nationals and the like, who actually work within vertically integrated businesses and have no idea that they're in vertically integrated businesses, which I find interesting. A lot of them are independent, which I also find quite interesting as well. How the hell that one happens, I don't quite know. But I just thought I'd throw that one in a way. If you've got an explanation for that one next up, then please let me know for it. So I think that there's an assertion that vertical integration is evil because it's about big institutional asset managers trying to flog crap underperforming funds. And I've got a degree of sympathy for that. I can see where the problems may lie. That can happen, but as a summary of the term, it's always used in the pejorative sense. It's a little bit lazy for me, and it's just shorthand for why does everything cost so much? I think fundamentally the real concern now is who controls pricing. And when we talk about vertical integration, I think we're really talking about who is actually setting the end price to the end consumer for products, for services, etc. In the utopia that David's talked about, firms aren't vertically integrated. So I think this is a complete false opposition. I've already mentioned this issue around independence. I don't know what this pool of non-vertically integrated firms are, what you would actually call them. The idea in this utopia is that market forces drive down costs, and we've just seen that over the past 10, 20 years, etc. That's never actually happened in the independent market whatsoever. So I take some of Dan's points about how costs can go up because the control over pricing is placed in the hands of a fewer number of people. Well, that's about control over pricing. It's not about vertical integration per se, and that's always happened in the independent market in any case. Finally, it can have a greater impact on price and a positive impact on price as well. So disruptive pricing for me requires the assimilation and the removal of parts of the value chain, not simply ownership and control over it. Politely asking each part of the value chain to make a bit less money just doesn't work, and we've seen that for years. We've seen that for a long time. One of today's speakers, Anthony, who's just sat over there, runs ostensibly a vertically integrated business, but he's seen as one of the good guys because for around 50 basis points, you can buy simplified advice from them. It includes the platform fee, it includes the product fee, it includes the investment management fees and all the funds as well. I think that everything's in there looked in for about 50 basis points, depending on which portfolio you go into as well. So whilst Dan's said, does it reduce costs? No, with no evidence beyond that particular statement. There is evidence of people using it to drive down costs as well. It's about who controls the pricing and the decision that they make fundamentally. Who's actually outsourcing it, who's actually running the technology in the background is a completely different question altogether. Some vertically integrated firms actually do the job themselves, might run their own investment proposition. Others are actually outsourcing it to other people as well. So not accepting vertical integration, for me, effectively means accepting the status quo and incremental changes to pricing along the way. Nothing majorly disruptive. I've talked about pricing and also not so far about proposition. You know, at the moment, dealing with multiple people in the value chain, you think about the 10% drop notifications that came out at the back end of last year. You think about pensions illustrations and what they're trying to tell you and what they're not telling you. At the moment, as a consumer, as a purchaser of financial services and financial advice as I am, it's like being yelled at by a bunch of people giving you contradictory at worst and confusing at best information right now. So only through integration, and that doesn't mean APIs, which are all rubbish out there. A lot of the integration that goes on is pretty poor in the industry right now, and people that don't want to fundamentally cooperate with one another because they are in competition and see themselves in competition in the longer term. Through vertical integration, you can also get more of a consensus and more of a uniform message out to clients as well. And as I've finished on here, I've written down, and that's a bit like physics, the really complicated stuff that would take too much time for me to explain here. But it is, you'll just have to trust me on that. Crowbarred in at the end.
Sorry, David, would you like to come back for your 2-minute rebuttal? They've been both very good on
let's
time.
Go and sit on the, let's sit on
Yeah,
the chairs.
So you sit slightly on the chairs, okay.
Am I allowed to do this? Yeah, okay. I don't think fundamentally we disagree, because I think...
So boring. They totally disagree.
How many independent financial advisors are whole of market? And under MiFID, of course, you don't have to be. Yeah? How many actually go out and find 9,500 different products and do it? Ian's point about MISC, I think, is if there's a bunch of stuff that can make it really simple and drive the technology for a good price, and you want to put your customer proposition on the top of that, that's great. Is that vertically integrated or independent? Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I acknowledge that there are a small number of firms who are trying really hard and using technology and clever stuff to build a vertically integrated business, which is a much better proposition for the customer. But 90% of it, what we would describe as vertically integrated today, is not doing that, and it's not driving a good outcome because the controllers, because the capital, my capital, yes, that I'm putting at risk as an investor, I'm not getting a fair share of the return on that, and that's a bad outcome fundamentally.
Where I'd question that, i.e. disagree with it, is in my own experience. So if I look back several years ago, I guess pre to post RDR, that kind of 5-year, 7-year timescale, in my 360 days supporting predominantly independent advice, in fact, pretty much every firm at that point was independent. The majority of firms that exited the market at that point went to SJP. The reason why that exit was successful into SJP and why that's such a good asset gathering machine for them, I mean, we all know there are various reasons for it and various incentives for it, but fundamentally, a lot of these acquisitions and deals are predicated on the pricing and the cost to the end consumer being pretty similar. I did a piece of work a while back for one vertically integrated national firm, and almost every single acquisition target, the independent firms were charging more or the same as they were at that point in time. There was one firm that we did some analysis on, who were pure passive from an investment perspective, and their total costs, and this didn't include transaction costs because that wasn't around back in those days for it. The information wasn't there. But it was well under 10% the extra cost that the vertically integrated firm was in there for it. So in my own experience, we wouldn't be seeing, it's difficult to go out and acquire lots of businesses if they're charging far more or far less than you are. We've seen lots of acquisition activity in recent years, and a lot of it from vertically integrated businesses. I just fundamentally don't think that would happen if there was a huge price disparity between the acquired independent firms and the vertically integrated ones.
Right. I'm going to take it to a vote. Journalists in the room, you're not allowed to look at who's voted which way, okay? So, the House view, vertically integrated business models are for the benefit of the firm rather than the client. A show of hands. Oof, we might have to do this twice, okay? And for the opposing view, Phil.
Oh, I want...
You win the dinosaur tail. It's definitely the better prize. Great, thank you both.
Thank you.